Most lifters experience a serious amount of progress in the beginning of their journeys. They see more muscle, they're getting stronger by the workout. Then there's a point where they don't experience the same. They feel like the mirror isn't changing, they're not getting as strong, and they reach a plateau. They just assume that's their genetic limit. The reason might be much simpler. They just stopped following the principles of progression. That's the seventh and final principle of high intensity training. And if you kept up with the series from the beginning, everything we talked about is building up to this moment.
Once your goal is sharply but realistically defined, all that remains is carrying out your plan. In other words, you'll never know how good you might have become unless you try. So let's get with it.
It's become very popular these days in Brazil that people take notebooks to the gym. They want to track their progress, they want to track whether they're improving or not, which is something I highly represent. I always do this, I tell people to do it, because progress is not random. It doesn't just happen. There's variables that you can track and change so you can see more or less progress. One of the biggest mistakes people can make if they want to see consistent progress is just believe that it randomly happens. Muscle growth follows a simple biological rule. We already saw that in the last few chapters. Your body needs a stressor that signals to it, hey, something's happening here, I need to change. In the context of the gym, you send a signal through your workout and your body understands that it needs to get stronger and it needs to get bigger in terms of muscle size. If you don't give your body enough reasons to change, it won't. Your body's pretty good at keeping everything constant. Muscle building that's not normal, it's above average, isn't necessary for survival, so the body's not concerned with that. So you need to keep sending the signal so your body keeps adapting. But guess what? Your body will eventually adapt to the intensity of the signal that you're already sending. So the intensity needs to increase too. That's what this chapter is about, really, just that simple concept. But how you can translate that into the gym is a whole nother world, and that's where people usually get this wrong. Following the same reasoning, why do you think beginners see the most progress? Well, when you go from doing nothing to doing something, that is already a drastic difference. So anything that you do in terms of intensity is going to send the signal to your body. Hey, I need to grow, I need to adapt. So in the beginning, you're going to see much more progress doing much less. Your body's not used to the stressor of the gym, so it will need to adapt regardless. You don't need to do any crazy workout. You don't need to go to failure every time. The stimulus required in the beginning is very much smaller. So you will see more progress solely because of that. And the tricky thing about going to the gym is that the better you get at it, the better you understand the mechanism, how things work, you understand the movements better, you feel more in control, the harder it'll be to build more muscle. You see top athletes talking about this all the time. They don't put a lot of muscle at the top. They've built a good foundation and they work around it. Because when you're so good at what you do in terms of bodybuilding, that means you've nailed everything. Nutrition, training, recovery. It's much harder for your body to get a strong signal because you've already done everything you can. The signal is already sent. For you to reach that new height, that new level of intensity in your workouts, it's gonna be really hard. That's simply diminishing returns. That's how it goes. You're gonna get better at the art of working out, at the science of working out, whatever you wanna call it. But building muscle, the process in itself will be harder, especially with high intensity. You're not gonna get to the top without training intensely. So how do you overcome that? That's the challenge. But you don't need to get to the pro level to feel stuck. Many people feel that much early on. I believe everyone that has gone to the gym for a long period of time has experienced some type of plateau or has felt discouraged because of lack of progress. I defend that that's highly avoidable because if you are able to track your progress, if you are taking the notes, on this exercise, I used X amount of weight last week, today I used a little bit more, or I got more reps, or my range of motion is better. You keep track of everything that you've done, you are able to adjust whatever you need in your routine to increase and improve in the next workout. As we know, the body's mechanism to build more muscle is the same throughout every single person in the world. But how fast it happens, for example, is different. So someone will experience a plateau after training for a year, and then someone else will experience it in 3 months. The process is the same, but how good you are at building muscle is individual, it's genetic. So whether you're getting to your adaptation stage at 3 months after you started working out, or a year or two, what you have to do is roughly the same. You need to increase the intensity of the stressor. So that is the point. where the stress that used to signal muscle growth is not sufficient anymore because of the adaptation process. Your body is now aware of the signal and it knows how to respond. What do you do after that? You increase the intensity of the stimulus. And here, the notion that more is better is right, but it's used in the wrong way. Well, when you see people making no progress at the gym, or a friend just comes up and talks to you, hey man, I've been going to the gym, I've been doing everything right, but I don't see any change. What do you think I should do? Most people would say, well man, just do more cardio. Just do more lifting, more times a week, whatever. Do more sets per muscle group. Work more to get more from it. And that is completely wrong. We already know that. Of course, volume is something that's going to affect muscle growth. And it doesn't need to be one set like Mike says. There's an individual aspect of it, which is how much you can recover from a given number of sets. But what you have to focus on isn't to increase the volume. You need to find ways to increase the intensity of the signal like we've talked before. Imagine this. You have a hammer and a nail, and you need to put it through the wall. You put it there, and then you start. 1, 2, the intensity is the same, and it's not moving. You're not able to put it through the wall. What do you think is going to happen if you keep hitting it in the same way, with the same intensity, just hitting it more? Nothing is going to happen. You're just going to stay there, doing it over and over again. But if you decide, I'm going to nail this shit hard, well, it's going to go through the fucking wall. It's the same with the muscle growth. Sending more of the same signal won't make the body adapt because it already knows that signal. That's the whole point. You need to send a stronger stimulus that the body is not used to, the body's not ready for, to trigger the adaptation, to trigger the growth, and then you're going to see the result. The distance factor, for example. You can't change the length of your bones, so you're not able to change the distance that the dumbbell travels when you're doing a bicep curl because the length of your bones is the same. One thing that you can do though is that if you're not already using full range of motion, you can increase it. That will definitely increase the intensity of the stimulus, for sure. But in high intensity training, we're already assuming that you're doing full range of motion. So we take the distance factor out. What is the problem with the time factor, the time it takes to complete a given rep? People just think that they need to use high speeds, and that's not the truth. We know that momentum is an external force. It's not related to muscle contraction. So if you grab a dumbbell and you try to move it faster, the likelihood of you using the momentum is very high. Higher speeds don't mean high speeds. If you're doing the bicep curl, for example, and you have a very challenging weight, you should try to lift it as fast as you can. But if it's heavy enough, it's not going to be fast. It can be faster, but not fast. Imagine you have 150 pounds in the bar. You want to lift that fast? It's not going to happen because it is very heavy. So you're trying to lift it as fast as possible, but it's not a fast movement. And that's where people would get this wrong. It's not about doing a movement at a high speed because that will likely engage in momentum. It's about doing it as fast as you can. So it's tricky. We don't really want to do that. But if you keep those two constant, you have full range of motion already in place, and you are doing your movement at a speed where momentum doesn't come into play, what's left is for you to increase the weight that you use. The more weight that you use, the higher the intensity of the stimulus, because the contraction of that muscle will need to be stronger given the bigger amount of weight that's dealing with. And that is the issue I see with most people that go to the gym actually trying to build muscle. There's nothing wrong in keeping the same routine if you're just wanting to spend calories, if your goal is just to stay active. But if you want to see the progress, you need to give your body a reason to change, and that is by progressing in terms of weight. Even reps, you can keep the weight, but if you try to get more reps with that weight, that's also progress. You know, there needs to be a reason for your body to want to change. But if you are a beginner watching this, don't get discouraged, and I'll explain why. There's two factors here. The power of those small increases, but that are consistent, and also the power of your mind. As a beginner, you shouldn't be worried about what your progress is going to look like when you're advanced. You need to get there first. That's the first point. But in saying that, oh my God, I'm not able to increase the weight that I'm using by 5 pounds or 10 pounds every time. So I have to increase it by 1 pound? That's crazy. Well, put that into actual practice. There's 52 weeks in a month. No, there's 52 weeks in a year, roughly. And if you were to hit chest, for example, once a week, just to make things clear, if you're able to progress every single time you go by 1 pound, at the end of the year, your weight that you're using is going to be 51 pounds heavier than whatever you started. Brother, sister, whoever. 51 pounds in a year. If you're able to progress by 1 pound, which sounds like nothing when you look at it from this tiny perspective, like weekly, 1 pound. Oh my God, next week I'm just gonna go up by 2 from the moment that I started, and then 3, and then 4. But expand that vision, expand that perspective to a month, 3 months, 1 year. Imagine you have a bench of 200 pounds right now in this moment. You're able to increase it by 1 pound every single workout every week. You go to 251, my guy. That is a huge increase. And that's the power of consistency. You really don't need to make big increases in the weight that you're using. That is too drastic of a change for it to be sustainable. Rather, you should make smaller changes, smaller increases that are sustainable throughout time, and you are going to see a lot of progress in the long term. And now we reach the part that I am sometimes the most interested in. I love the physical aspect of bodybuilding, but the mentality is really something that's not talked about enough. When you feel like you have a mission and you have a goal that's so important to you, you will find ways to achieve it. Now, I'm not saying you don't want something enough if you fail at it, but the pursuit of that physique, the pursuit of becoming that person you want to be, is something that drives you from within, and it's very much powerful in the sense of changing who you are, not necessarily just physically, but mentally too. I experienced that a lot. I've noticed how I've changed in and outside of the gym because of my dedication in the gym. Things that used to be harder, adversities in general, are not as hard because I was able to be consistent at something that's really challenging overall, with a lot of setbacks. And now things that maybe sounded like they were the end of the world before, I understand that I just have to take a step back and assess, is it really that? Or am I able to push through? 99% of the times, we're able to push through. But when you apply this specifically to bodybuilding, the principle comes from the fact that your body doesn't want to build more muscle. We've talked about this already. It's not natural for you to have an enormous amount of muscle in your body. It doesn't help you in any way. Survival-wise, really no benefit. So your body's going to make it harder and harder for you to build more muscle. And just that challenge in itself can be discouraging. Intensity in itself, high intensity workouts will always be hard, from a beginner stage to an intermediate stage to an advanced stage, because a high intensity stimulus is something that takes you out of your comfort zone, and you're going to be able to do that only if you have the willpower to do it. When you have that less rep that you don't know whether you can get it or not, or you had a bad day and you don't know whether you can go to the gym and put the same amount of effort, man, it really tests you, and it's not going to get easier. On the contrary, it's going to get harder. The intensity will always need to increase, and you're going to have to get that extra rep that you never got before. You need to go that extra mile consistently over years. So bodybuilding, if anything, is a huge test of your willpower, a huge test of your resilience, your ability to cope with adversity, because, like I said, it's going to get harder before it gets easier. And it's never going to get easier, really. It just sounds better. But if you want it enough and you're able to value the small improvements that you make consistently, it is so worth it, at least for me. Man, there's many days where I don't want to go do my cardio. There's many days where I don't feel like hitting the gym, driving to the gym. Oh my God, there's going to be traffic. Oh my God, I'm going to have a shitty workout. That's especially true when you're in a deficit, okay? Just a huge detail there, because I am in a deficit and I'm currently very hungry, very much looking forward to my next meal. And this is why I tell people in general, bodybuilding isn't for everyone. Going to the gym is. Staying active for health is for everyone. Bodybuilding isn't. It is very hard to be able to push yourself in the gym every time you go with high intensity stimulus. It's super taxing on your system, and mentally you got to go to a place that average people don't have to go. You know, you have to put extra effort into being uncomfortable. And who wants to be uncomfortable? Well, there's some crazy people like me that do. I know the value that comes from it. So I search it. I want to be uncomfortable because I want to improve. I want to be better as a person, as a boyfriend, as a son, as whatever, a friend, as an athlete for sure. So it's really a matter of what you're looking for. the gym is for everyone, in my opinion, because it's just a good habit to have. Longevity, health, but bodybuilding isn't. It really isn't. And if you are one of those people that are looking to build more muscle, just be aware. The mind is probably the most important thing you're gonna have along the way. It's gonna be your best friend, it's gonna be your worst enemy. But if you're able to hold on to your willpower and hold on to that small increase in weight that you got last week, or the mission, a show that you have, or a weight goal, whatever that is, your mind's gonna be the most important thing in this sport. We'll move on to the next part of the book, but I'm curious to know, out of all the principles that we talked about, which one stood out to you the most and why? I know there's not a lot of comments for me to read in my posts, so every time there is one, I try to give my full attention. I'm curious to see what you guys are thinking about this, and I want to know your thoughts. So next week, another video, and I hope to see you guys then. Peace.